Hi everyone, I'm Barbara Beckmann. I am an artist in New York and I'm doing a commission piece today. A little tiny wooden box that was so much fun. It was just a little different than my usual paintings and commission paintings like portraits, so I really enjoyed this one. So this box was plain, it was just the mahogany box and it holds tea bags. It's for a bridal shower and the client had a great idea but didn't really know how to execute it. So what I did was I took framing pieces and I put them down just to fancy up the top of the box a little bit. But the miter joints weren't exactly perfect. So what I did was I just took household spackle and just pushed them down into the corners of the where the miter edge didn't meet so perfectly. Used my finger mostly. It was a better tool than this palette knife. The palette knife helped me get it on there originally, but my finger actually was a much better choice. It was able to take off some of the residue on the top so I wouldn't have to do any of the sanding. So I suggest fingers for a lot of things. They are, God's favorite tool that he ever gave you. So my fingers worked really, really well doing this. It dried pretty quickly, and as it was drying, I was actually able to go on to other parts of the project. So it worked out perfectly. And at the end, when I painted this gold, you couldn't see anything. You'll see that at the ends. I used a rag here and there too, but really my fingers were probably the best choice there. See, it just took it off very nicely and quickly. And it dried pretty quick. It was drying like 10 minutes. So what I'm doing here is I'm mixing up a very pale colored yellow. And the client wanted a white teapot, but I thought it might look too much like a sticker or some sort of rub-on. And I needed something to go complement that wood. The wood was so beautiful, mahogany color, that I talked her into letting me do like a pale yellow. So I'm just sketching it out with a number 1 round brush. I'm just blocking in shapes at this point. Now, I've been drawing and sketching my entire life, so I can sketch pretty much on anything and not worry about it. But if you were doing this at home and you were afraid, because if you actually make a mistake on a box like this, if you were to wipe off this paint, it would definitely mar this surface. So you really only have one shot at making this right. I've just been sketching so long that I'm pretty confident in my ability of what I can do. So I don't stress about it too much. But I know when I first started, it was stressful. I couldn't make a mistake. And people were giving me sometimes, often, like this client gave me her box to do. So I can't ruin this. I don't know where she got it. I don't know how much it was. I have one shot at this. So early on when I started doing these commission pieces and things like this, I stressed. I'm not really sure how you would actually put this on here if you did not know how to draw. I'm sure there's a way, so if anybody does know, maybe you can leave it in the comments. I'm not sure if you could use a graphite paper. I would be afraid of graphite only because you would have to push pretty hard, like with a ballpoint pen, to get that graphite onto the box. So I'm not really sure, but I'm curious now how somebody would do it if they could not draw. But you can sketch this out ahead of time. You might even be able to sketch it out and actually cut it out, almost making a template like that where you could trace around your actual cutout and then you could go in and add your details in the inside, or get your basic shape. That would be another way to do it, I would imagine. So once I had the shape pretty well marked out where I wanted it to go, I just started to block it in. So this particular piece of wood that I'm working on, or the top part, had a couple imperfections in the mahogany. And we decided to, instead of having your eye go right to it, I was going to either cover it with a rose or part of the teapot. So there wasn't too many. There was only like 1 or 2, but they were dark enough where you would actually see them, and it would make your eye go there first. So I was able to luckily just paint over it and it went right away. So that's a good thing about paint like this, is it had good coverage. What am I using? I'm using Folk Art. So it's just a regular craft paint that you could find at Michael's or AC Moore or Joann's Fabrics. And it's a good quality paint. It's probably my favorite paint out of all the craft paints that are available. It's not a high-end acrylic paint like your Goldens. Like I would use my Goldens to paint on canvases, but not so much my crafty stuff like this. So Folk Art was a great paint. I'll put a link to that below as well. The client also wanted to have like this little trailing rosebuds along the front of the box. So I just kept in mind, keep everything nice and skinny and thin and small and petite because this is a small box. I would say it's probably like a 12 by 8 maybe. It's adorable. I should have actually taken pictures to show you the inside of it. It's got like a white colored inside that's kind of like a fabric. It's just really pretty. And it has places that you would tuck in your little teas and stuff. So it's really cute. I believe this is for a bridal shower. I think it's for a bridal shower, and I believe it's the mother of the bride, the mother of the groom, actually, I'm sorry, who's commissioning me to do this for them. So it's a really cute idea. I guess it's a theme-based shower. So I quickly went along, added the greenery, and now I'm just taking a little bit of pink and a little bit of white, and I'm actually double loading my brush. So pink on one side, white on the other, and I'm just touching and making a rose-shaped bud. And basically it's the same shape as you would do your leaves, but because you're mixing the pink and the white together, it's definitely going to give you the illusion that it's a rose and not a leaf. But they're really pretty much the same. I just watched my placement of where I'm putting them. On the left side of the box, I had them going to the left, and then I did switch the direction to have them go more towards the right on the right side of the box. So this took a few coats of paint. And like I said, this is a great quality craft paint. It's just because, I guess, of the surface that I'm painting on. It took a few coverages, a few applications to get good coverage on it. So as things were drying, I would just go back and forth between the two. So what I'm doing here is I took a little bit of the cream colored paint and I'm just putting a couple dots, making it a little bit more whimsical. Just adding some fun and some interest to the front. Very, very tiny, almost like a period at the end of a sentence. So while that's drying, what I did was I came in and I took a gold paint marker that I've actually pushed out onto the paper plate. And I'm just using a fine tip brush and I'm going over any areas where I had that spackle. And it covered great. You really could not tell that that spackle was there at all. So I just took my time making sure I had everything covered. Now part of the frame was not painted at all. It almost looked like MBF. It just wasn't a finished edge. So I had to go around the entire thing as well and make sure I covered that up. So I think this is what, my third coat now. It did take quite a few coats until I was happy with it. So what's nice is you can change the shape at any time if you don't like it or if you decide you want it to change it up a little bit. It's a great paint. You could just change it up. You can't wipe it off because you would definitely, the box that I've painted on already would be ruined if I were to wipe this paint off. So here you go. Let me give you a close-up of this. It's really cute. It's very dainty and delicate and feminine. And it's got good coverage on the teapot, so I let it dry. So I came back a little later on and I took just a simple note card to like a 4x6 piece of paper. And I'm just using that for a straight edge more or less. But it's also protecting my the oils from my hand from getting onto the box. But it comes in handy just to get a little bit of a straight edge there, like a ruler. It's kind of a weird spot and I had to fit it in between that framing piece, so it worked perfectly for what I needed. So I'm actually using very, very watered down white acrylic paint, and you really can't see what I'm doing, and I'm doing that on purpose. I'm doing that deliberately because I'm going to go in and make her name gold. So if I were to just take the gold and go right on top of this wood, it would the wood's so dark and the gold, it's kind of like a transparent almost, so you wouldn't really see it. It would be very dark. So I did this on purpose. I used white acrylic paint just to give it a base of where the lettering was going to be. So when I did apply the gold on top of it, it would be much brighter and you could see it. So I just take my time doing this because it has to be pretty straight and it has to be pretty perfect. There is another imperfection somewhere over here. It's just a really small blotch that I want to make sure that one of these letters actually covers and goes over. I believe it was the J, which is the top of the J, which is why I started that high. But again, at the end, you couldn't even tell it was there. And it came out pretty nice. I was happy with the lettering. So Jeannie's Sweet Tea. And I thought that is so adorable for a bridal shower. And I would have loved that. You know, it's nice and feminine. It's just a nice summer wedding. It's just a perfect time. And she'll always have this box. This is going to be a great keepsake for her. A lot of people ask me things like, you know, what can you paint on? Well, personally, I paint on everything. There is a paint that you can get for any surface, whether it's plastic, whether it's glass. You can always find paint or add things into the paint to make it workable for whatever surface you're on. So I always look at things, especially old things, and I love to transform them and give them a new life. Now this box was definitely beautiful. It was, you know, mahogany colored. The inside, like I said, was fabric and just beautiful. But this really personalizes it and makes it special for this girl's wedding day or wedding shower. So I love taking something and changing it up. So the client who actually commissioned me to do this, she's very, very creative as well. And she is great with decorating, like her home and just different, she has a different way of looking at things than most people do. She likes things very grand and very sparkle. She likes sparkles, but she just, I love that about her. She's very creative in her own way. But she can't draw like this. So I think both of us putting our heads together, this came out pretty well. I mean, this was entirely her idea. I shouldn't even take any credit for it. She told me what color, what she wanted, but she did give me some artistic license as well. So I was able to put some of my personality into that. So like the lettering that I chose, or the shape of the teapot, and the flowers. She did, you know, trust me enough to say, here you go, do what you want to do. But she came up with this idea, and I thought it was just a wonderful idea. So here I am just going around with this gold paint brush. I'm going to have to look up what it is. It's actually, it's a metallic paint, gold paint brush, but it's in another language. I can't tell what it is. It looks Chinese or Japanese. I'm not sure. Definitely not from our country, but I think I have the actual packaging that it came in. So I will look that up and put a link below if you want to know what exactly this is. It says made in Japan, so I'm sure it's from Japan. So I tried to use that gold and also incorporate it along the front, cross-pollinating, which is what I always say. I like to take something from one section and add it to another section so it looks like it's deliberately supposed to be there. So earlier on, when I went ahead and put those dots in, I used that cream colored paint. I could have left them there. They certainly look fine. But when I went ahead and put this gold into the middles of those, it really added a little bit more of a higher end detail to it. It was really adorable. So I'm using the same pen, and I'm just coming around, and I'm working on the inside where the cream color is, not on the mahogany side. Because as I said earlier, it would be too dark. You might not see it. So I'm careful to go around working on the inside of this shape, and I'm just giving everything a nice gold trim. I thought it would tie in with the frame, and it would tie in with her name. And I'm also going to use this pen. It's actually a brush. I keep calling it a pen. It is a brush. It's just filled with gold metallic paint. The flow of this pen, brush, whatever you want to call it, was really wonderful. I didn't have to push out. The only thing I had to be careful of is that it did not drip, because like I said earlier, you have one shot at this. If this dripped anywhere, it would not be good. I'm careful here not to lean on that lettering also. I'm actually going over it. You really can't tell from the video, but I'm not touching it at all with my hand. So once I outlined it, this is when I went in and decided on where my details were going to go. So the bottom, I wanted to have a nice little base with a little bit of like a scalloped edge, or something that was decorative, something that would jazz it up and make it a little bit more fancy. So I just went around, almost put like little circles or little U's all along the bottom there. This particular paint that I'm using, this metallic paint, it does dry pretty quickly, so I wasn't worried about it smudging at all. So once I added some different things, I tried to incorporate some dots and some different little fancy suggestions of things along the pots. Like I added these two on the handle. You can see these two little gold bumps, or three little gold bumps. I thought that would be something interesting too. So I added those as well as the top part where that little very, very top piece comes up. I added like a gold swirl up there. So now I'm just coming in and I'm blocking in some of the roses. And I'm just using the same paint that I did earlier, the pink with the white, and just making shapes. I'm not really stressing out about them. They're so small that as long as I go in different directions with my brush, as you can see, my hand is, I'm changing the direction as I go and changing the brush strokes just a little bit. Just giving the idea that it's a rose. I'm not spending much time or detail in painting them in at all. So here I'll put a couple rosebuds here, and again, uneven. There's 3 of them, not 2 of them. I like things to be very odd numbered. So I added one on the end of her J for her name, and I added one at the end of the T, just because I knew at the bottom of this teapot there's a big space. If you can see it, there's like 1.5 inches space. There was an imperfection right where I'm hitting right now. And that is what I needed to cover up. It was just a slight little tiny like coloration in that wood, which is normal, but it's just that every other piece of that wood was so perfect that you could really see it. So that's when I chose to just add some buds on top of it. So I just like to go ahead and maybe brighten things up. That's what I'm doing here. A lot of layering. I take my time. I go over things as needed. So once that pink was dry, I came back with a little bit of green, and I'm just going around the bud, and I'm just going to go ahead and put in a stem here and a couple little leaves. This was really, really fun for me to do. It's just something different than what I normally do. You know, I work on a lot of commission paintings. I do a lot of people portraits. And I do a lot of house portraits for realtors. That's basically a lot of my time. So that's very stressful because those commissions really have to look like people or look like who I'm drawing. So they're very stressful sometimes. And so this to me is fun and carefree. This is more like decorative painting. And I did that years ago, you know, when I was just first learning how to paint. So it's always fun to kind of go back to where you started from. I used to sell things like this at fairs too. When I first had my first son, he's 21 years old now. And when he was a baby, I stayed at home. I stopped working and I started to work from my home studio. And I used to sell a lot of these just painted already at a store, a local store. Actually, the Clintons live there, Bill and Hillary Clinton. It's called Chappaqua. It's in New York. And there is a little store that I rented space out of, and I sold a lot of my things in that store. And then it got harder to drive there because I'm actually like pretty, not too far away, but it was about a half-hour ride. When you have a little newborn, it was not fun to go trucking through the store with all these materials that I had to put out on a shelf. So I stopped doing that and I started transitioning my business to stay at home and work from my studio. And over the years, it has just evolved and become what it is today. So the lettering also needed another coat. So that was not so hard to do because it was already there. I just went over it very quickly, just tidying up the lines a little bit. I love what she had me write, Jeannie Sweet Tea. I just think it's just so cute. And I think she'll have this forever. So I decided I want to put a little bit more detail into that pot. You know, it's a fancy like English pot. So I'm putting some dots here and there. I'm putting some lines. I put some shadow in some areas. I just wanted to give it some more detail to make it look a little bit more fancy. So I went ahead and added some in the handle. I added some in the spout. I wanted to add some of that gold down the bottom. That's a cross-pollinating, incorporating that gold here and there. The gold was a really beautiful touch. So I'm happy with the way the box came out. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment. I'd love to answer anything you have. I am going to seal this with Krylon acrylic spray. That will be fine. I'll put a link to that below also. If you like my videos, please give me a thumbs up and please subscribe. I post a lot of different things, not just the same thing over and over again. So it's whatever I'm working on. I'll just try to film for you because you might get something out of it or find some inspiration. Happy painting. Thank you so much for watching.